Hello and welcome to our 5 minutes with Ekaterina tips and tricks for learning a language. And today I want to talk to you about a very common question, and every year I have some students who will ask me if I should learn the language as the children do. My opinion, I'm pointing it out immediately, is that no, you shouldn't. And every time I have this battle because people think that when we were children, we were acquiring the language in the environment very fast. We picked it and we just used it, and that's how we should learn the foreign language. And here, the first idea when we start the language is that we should read the fairy tales and we should passively acquire the language. We should be in environment. We shouldn't put lots of efforts, or we should repeat over and over again the same word as we do with children, for example. And this makes a very good point actually when you are not learning a language, because if you're just approaching it thinking rationally about it, it makes perfect sense. But from the practical point of view, from real life situations and from real life experience, that's not what you want. So if right now you're beginning to learn the language and you think that you should learn a language like you did with your native language when you were a child, just forget about it. And that's here I will explain you why. The first idea is that probably you're not child anymore, but it's not very persuasive, isn't it? So let's just put all these things that you think to do, and look at it by one. First of all, fairy tales. Fairy tales are great, and it's a huge collection of the folk knowledge and of common knowledge. Of course, if you are learning some language, you will need to learn some foreign culture which will help you with the language, but fairy tales in the majority are very complex to understand. If you don't believe me, just open any of the fairy tales, of classic fairy tales in your native language, and try to think how would you explain a foreigner the meaning which is in there. And also pay attention to the vocabulary. You'll be surprised that there are so many words that you never use in your everyday situations in your native language. And also the meaning is so deep that in order to understand it, you need to understand the common speech, you need to understand the context, and you need to understand the culture. That's why we read fairy tales to children, in order to teach them our folk moral, in order to give them the historical overview or some kind of archaic overview how our society approached to different problems. And for you, you're not in this context and you just cannot understand or cannot explain for yourself all these fairy tales in your target language. It will be so tricky and so difficult that you will give up sooner or later with the fairy tales. So you cannot use the fairy tales when you learn a language because of the complex vocabulary and complex cultural meaning in them. Secondly, just being passive learner, being in environment is also a bad idea because your brain is lazy. Brain is lazy, that's normal, and your brain will just think about these words, think about this information as about the noise. It will ignore it. Your subconscious wouldn't grab the words and bring it to your conscious. Even if subconsciously you'll grab some information, it will never be on the top of your head or on the top of your tongue, or literally you cannot speak. So it's never it, even if you've been there and somebody was repeating lots of words. Maybe if somebody else after some time will say this word for you, you'll say, oh, I heard it, I know this word, but you will never remember what's the meaning of the word. So this is also a bad idea because it's just not working. Your brain will just block this information and you wouldn't get it. And the third one is just to repeat the words over and over again in normal everyday speech without learning grammar. Recently, I had a student who said, should I quit grammar? The grammar is so hard to learn, it's very complex. Maybe I should do it without grammar, just repeating, making all these things not understandable, but speak and learn as much as I can. This way actually is working. I cannot say that it's not working, but when you're a child, you have a ton of time. And you're not learning grammar, of course, before you come to school, before you're 7 or even 10 years old. But you are learning these structures for 10 years or for 7 years. Look at the children. Firstly, they're learning, developing their brain, so it's a little bit different learning process. But also try to remember how many times you need to say to the child mama before the child will actually say mama back to you. It should be 100 times a day, every day during a couple of months, in order to learn only one word. And with other words, it's the same. Our parents are always nursing us and singing or saying the word over and over again, pointing on something and saying, this is, this is, this is. It will take 50 repetition or even 100 repetition in order for the child to remember it. Ask yourself if you have so much time in order to get this information in that way. Grammar is not the only way to learn the language. Reading is not the only way to learn the language. Your brain can acquire the language just talking to people when they say one word over and over again. But your friends who are native speakers, they would be bored. They would never be that persistent like your mother were when you were a child. So they will never say, oh, this is a chair, 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 again and again and again. Unless it's your boyfriend or girlfriend. That's why probably people are saying that it's the best way to learn foreign language, starting the relationships with somebody. But if it's not the point and it's not your goal to find a partner in the language, nobody will say chair, 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 chair again. And as for myself, I'm not patient enough, so I would, even being a girlfriend, I wouldn't do it. That's how it works. So in order to get this word, you will need somebody to repeat it over and over again, or you will need the app in order to do it again and again, or to hire a teacher, a language partner who will do it over and over again. And it will take so long. It will take a lot of your time. When I work with children, I do work with children starting from the age of 4 years old. I will need to repeat to them small sentences, and then the next week we'll repeat it again, and the next week we'll repeat it again. And if for the 2 weeks we wouldn't review it, on the week 5 they will forget it. We will need to repeat it again. So if you don't have this time for repetition, start reading. And if you don't want to be like blind in this water, to swim blindly in these waters, you do need to use grammar. You do need to understand how the sentences are built and why the sentence this way is correct and saying it another way it wouldn't be correct. That's my idea as a teacher. I hope I answered the question if you learn as a child when you're adult, if you should use these methods, if you should just pretend that you're a child again. Also, as for me, there are some processes in the brain. Our brain doesn't work like the brain of 3 years old, but I wouldn't get into the very deep because we simply don't know. If you have ideas about how the brain works, leave me a comment. I will be happy to read them. But even not touching the brain thing, and that our brain is a little bit different when we're adults, we are comparing our experience and we have the objects in our head, we have the names for them already, we just need to transfer them to other language. It's another big topic on top of that. But my idea as a teacher, don't learn as a child. Find a good textbook for your age and just start working. And practice makes perfect. Thank you very much for watching. Hope it was helpful. Let me know what you think, and I hope to meet you very soon. Goodbye for now.